May 8th. What a glorious day. I have spent the whole morning lying on the grass in front of my house, under the enormous plane tree that forms a complete covering, shelter, and shade for it. I love this country, and I love living here because it is here I have my roots. Those deep down, slender roots that hold a man to the place where his forefathers were born and died, hold him to ways of thought and habits of eating, to customs as to particular foods, to local fashions of speech, to the intonations of country voices, to the scent of the soil, the villages, and the very air itself. I love this house of mine where I grew up. From my window I see the Seine flowers alongside my garden, beyond the high road, almost at my door, the great wide Seine, running from Rouen to Havre, covered with passing boats. Away to the left, Rouen, the widespread town with its blue roofs lying under the bristling host of Gothic belfries. They are beyond number, frail or sturdy, dominated by the leaden steeples of the cathedral, and filled with bells that ring out in the limpid air of fine mornings, sending me the sweet and far-off murmur of their iron tongues, a brazen song borne to me on the breeze, now louder, now softer, as it swells or dies away. How beautiful this morning has been. Towards 11 o'clock, a long convoy of boats followed each other past my gate. Behind, a squat tug looking like a fly, and wheezing painfully as it vomited thick clouds of smoke. After two English yachts whose crimson awnings rose and fell against the sky, came a splendid three-masted Brazilian, all white, gloriously clean and glittering. The sight of this ship filled me with such joy that I saluted her. I don't know why. May 11th. I have had a slight fever for the last few days. I feel ill, or rather, unhappy. Whence come these mysterious influences that change our happiness to dejection and our self-confidence to discouragement? It is as if the air, the unseen air, were full of unknowable powers, whose mysterious nearness we endure. I wake full of joy, my throat swelling with a longing to sing. Why? I go down to the waterside, and suddenly, after a short walk, I come back home, wretched, as if some misfortune were waiting me there. Why? Has a chill shudder passing lightly over my skin shaken my nerves and darkened my spirit? Have the shapes of the clouds, or the color of the day, the ever-changing color of the visible world, troubled my mind as they slipped past my eyes? Does anyone know? Everything that surrounds us, everything that we see, unseeing, everything that we brush past unknowing, everything that we touch impalpably, everything that we meet unnoticing, has on us, on the organs of our bodies, and through them on our thoughts and on our very hearts, swift, surprising, and inexplicable effects. How deep it is, this mystery of the invisible. We cannot fathom it with our miserable senses, with our eyes that perceive neither the too small, nor the too great, nor the too near, nor the too distant, nor the inhabitants of a star, nor the inhabitants of a drop of water, with our ears that deceive us, transmitting the vibrations of the air to us as sonorous sounds. They are fairies who by a miracle transmute movement into sound, from which metropolis's music is born, and make audible in song the mute quivering of nature. With our smell, feebler than a dog's, with our taste, that can only just detect the age of a wine. If only we had other organs to work other miracles on our behalf, what things we could discover around us. May 16th. I am certainly ill. I have been so well since last month. I have a fever, a rotten fever, or rather a feverish weakness that oppresses my mind as wearily as my body. All day and every day I suffer this frightful sense of threatened danger, this apprehension of coming ill or approaching death, this presentiment which is doubtless the warning sign of a lurking disease germinating in my blood and my flesh. May 18th. I have just consulted my doctor, for I was not getting any sleep. He found that my pulse is rapid, my eyes dilated, my nerves on edge, but no alarming symptoms of any kind. I am to take douches and drink bromide of potassium. May 25th. No change. My case is truly strange. As night falls, an incomprehensible uneasiness fills me, as if the night concealed a frightful menace directed at me. I dine in haste, then I try to read, but I don't understand the words. I can hardly make out the letters, so I walk backwards and forwards in my drawing room, oppressed by a vague fear that I cannot throw off, fear of sleeping and fear of my bed. About 10 o'clock I go up to my room. The instant I am inside the room, I double lock the door and shut the windows. I am afraid. Of what? I never dreaded anything before. I open my cupboards. I look under my bed. I listen. Listen. To what? It's a queer thing that a mere physical ailment, some disorder in the blood perhaps, the jangling of a nerve thread, a slight congestion, the least disturbance in the functioning of this living machine of ours, so imperfect and so frail, can make a melancholic of the happiest of men and a coward of the bravest. Then I lie down and wait for sleep as if I were waiting to be executed. I wait for it, dreading its approach. My heart beats, my legs tremble, my whole body shivers in the warmth of the bedclothes, until the moment I fall suddenly on sleep, like a man falling into deep and stagnant waters, there to drown. Nowadays I never feel the approach of this perfidious sleep that lurks near me, spying on me, ready to take me by the hand, shut my eyes, steal my strength. I sleep for a long time, 2 or 3 hours, then a dream. No, a nightmare seizes me. I feel that I am lying down and that I am asleep. I feel it, and I know it, and I feel too that someone approaches me, looking at me, touches me, climbs on my bed, kneels on my chest, takes my neck between its hands and squeezes with all his might, strangling me. I struggle madly, in the grip of the frightful impotence that paralyzes us in dreams. I try to cry out. I can't. I try to move. I can't. Panting with the most frightful efforts, I try to turn round, to fling off this creature who is crushing and choking me. I can't do it. Then suddenly I wake up, terrified, covered with sweat. I light a candle. I am alone. The crisis over. A crisis that happens every night. I fall at last into a quiet sleep until daybreak. June 2nd. My case has grown worse. What can be the matter with me? Bromide is useless. Douches are useless. Lately, by way of wavery, a body already quite exhausted, I went for a tramp in the forest of Ramar. At first, I thought that the fresh air, the clear, sweet air, full of the scents of grass and trees, was pouring a new blood into my veins and a strength into my heart. I followed a broad glade. Then I turned towards Beauville by a narrow walk between 2 ranks of immensely tall trees that flank a thick green roof, almost a black roof, between the sky and me. A shudder ran through me, not a shudder of cold, but a strange shudder of anguish. I quickened my pace, uneasy at being alone in the woods. unreasonably, stupidly, terrified by the profound solitude. Abruptly, I felt that I was being followed, that someone was on my heels, as near, touching me. I swung round. I was alone. I saw behind me only the straight open walk, empty, high, terrifyingly empty. It stretched out in front of me too, as far as the eye could see, as empty and frightening. I shut my eyes. Why? And I began to turn round on my heels at a great rate like a top. I almost fell. I opened my eyes again. The trees were dancing. The earth was swaying. I was forced to sit down. Then I didn't know which way I had been walking. Strange thought. Strange thought. I didn't know anything at all now. I took the right-hand way and found myself back in the avenue that had led me into the middle of the forest. June 3rd. The night has been terrible. I am going to go away for several weeks. A short journey will surely put me right. July 2nd. Home again. I am cured. I have had moreover a delightful holiday. I visited Mont St. Michael, which I didn't know. What a vision one gets arriving at Avranches as I did towards dusk. The town lies on a slope, and I was taken into the public garden at the end of the city. A cry of astonishment broke from me. A shoreless bay stretched before me as far as the eye could see. It lay between opposing coasts that vanished in distant mist, and in the midst of this vast tawny bay, under a gleaming golden sky, a strange hill, somber and peaked, thrust up from the sands at its feet. The sun had just sunk, and on a horizon still righteous with color was etched the outline of this fantastic rock that bore on its summit a fantastic monument. At daybreak I went out to it. The tide was low, as on the evening before, and as I drew near it, the miraculous abbey grew in height before my eyes. After several hours walking, I reached the monstrous pile of stones that supports the little city dominated by the great church. I clambered up the steep, narrow street. I entered the most wonderful Gothic dwelling made for God on this earth, as vast as a town, with innumerable low rooms hollowed out under the vaults and high galleries slung over slender columns. I entered this gigantic granite jewel, as delicate as a piece of lace, pierced everywhere by towers and airy belfries, where twisting stairways climb. Towers and belfries that by day against the blue sky, and by night against the dark sky lift strange heads, bristling with chimeras, devils, fantastic beasts, and monstrous flowers, and are linked together by slender carved arches. When I stood on the top, I said to the monk who accompanied me, "What a glorious place you have here, Father." "We get strong winds," he answered. Then we fell into talk as we watched the incoming sea run over the sand and cover it with a steel cuirass. The monk told me stories, all the old stories of this place, legends, always legends. One of them particularly impressed me. The people of the district, those who lived on the mount, declared that at night they heard voices on the sands, followed by the bleating of two she-goats, one that called loudly and one calling softly. Unbelievers insisted that it was the crying of sea-birds, which at one and the same time resembled bleatings, and the wailing of human voices. But benighted fishermen swore that they had met an old shepherd wandering on the dunes between two tides, round the little town flung so far out of the world. No one ever saw the head hidden in his cloak. He led, walking in front of them, a goat with the face of a man and a she-goat with the face of a woman. Both of them had long white hair and talked incessantly, disputing in an unknown tongue, then abruptly ceased crying to begin a loud bleating. "Do you believe it?" I asked the monk. He murmured, "I don't know." "If," I went on, "there existed on the earth beings other than ourselves, why have we not long ago learned to know them? Why have you yourself not seen them? Why have I not seen them myself?" He answered, "Do we see the 100,000th part of all that exists? Think, there's the wind, the greatest force in nature, which throws down men, shatters buildings, uproots trees, stirs up the sea into watery mountains, destroys cliffs and tosses the tall ships against the shore. The wind that kills, whistles, groans, roars. Have you seen it? Can you see it? Nevertheless, it exists." Before his simple reasoning, I fell silent. This man was either a seer or a fool. I should not have cared to say which, but I held my peace. What he had just said, I had often thought. July 3rd. I slept badly. I am sure there is a feverish influence at work here, for my coachman suffers from the same trouble as myself. When I came home yesterday, I noticed a strange pallor. "What's the matter with you, Jean?" I demanded. "I can't rest these days, sir. I'm burning the candle at both ends. Since you went away, sir, I haven't been able to throw it off. The other servants are all right, however, but I am terrified of getting caught by it again." July 4th. It has surely caught me again. My old nightmares have come back. Last night I felt crouching on me, someone who pressed his mouth on mine and drinks my life between my lips. Yes, he sucked it from my throat like a leech. Then he rose from me, replete, and I awoke, so mangled, bruised, enfeebled that I could not move. If this goes on for many days more, I shall certainly go away again. July 5th. Have I lost my reason? What has just happened? What I saw last night is so strange that my head reels when I think about it. Following my invariable custom in the evenings, I had locked my door. Then, feeling thirsty, I drank half a glass of water, and I happened to notice that my carafe was filled up right to its crystal stopper. I lay down after this and fell into one of my dreadful slumbers, from which I was jerked about 2 hours later by a shock more frightful than any of the others. Imagine a sleeping man who has been assassinated and who wakes with a knife through his lung, with the death rattle in his throat, covered with blood, unable to breathe, and on the point of death, understanding nothing. And there you have it. When I finally recovered my sanity, I was thirsty again. I lit a candle and went towards the table where I had placed my carafe. I lifted it and held it over my glass. Not a drop ran out. It was empty. It was completely empty. At first, I simply didn't understand. Then all at once a frightful rush of emotion so overwhelmed me that I was forced to sit down, or say rather that I fell into a chair. Then I leaped up again and looked around me. Then I sat down again, lost in surprise and fear. In front of the transparent crystal, I gazed at it with a fixed stare, seeking an answer to the riddle. My hands were trembling. Had someone drunk the water? Who? I? It must have been me. Who could it have been but me? So I was a somnambulist, all unaware I was living the mysterious double life that raised the doubt whether there be not two selves in us, or whether, in moments when the spirit lies unconscious, an alien self, unknowable and unseen, inhabits the captive body that obeys this other self as it obeys us, obeys it more readily than it obeys us. Oh, can anyone understand my frightful agony? Can anyone understand the feeling of a sane-minded, educated, thoroughly rational man staring in abject terror through the glass of his carafe, where the water has disappeared while he slept? I remained there until daylight, not daring to go back to bed. July 6th. I am going mad. My carafe was emptied again last night, or rather, I emptied it. But is it I? Is it I? Who can it be? Who? Oh my God. Am I going mad? Who will save me? July 10th. I have just made some astonishing experiments. Listen. On the 6th of July, before lying down in bed, I placed on my table wine, milk, water, bread, and strawberries. Someone drank. I drank all the water and a little of the milk. Neither the wine nor the bread nor the strawberries were touched. On the 7th of July, I made the same experiment and got the same result. On the 8th of July, I left out the water and the milk. Nothing was touched. Finally, on the 9th of July, I placed only the water and the milk on my table, taking care to wrap the carafes in white muslin cloths and to tie down the stoppers. Then I rubbed my lips, my beard, and my hands with a charcoal pencil and lay down. The usual overpowering sleep seized me, followed shortly by the frightful awakening. I had not moved. My bedclothes themselves bore no marks. I rushed towards my table. The cloths wrapped round the bottles remained spotless. I untied the cork, shaking with fear. All of the water had been drunk. All the milk had been drunk. Oh my God. I am leaving for Paris at once. July 13th. Paris. I suppose I lost my head during the last few days. I must have been the sport of my disordered imagination, unless I really am a somnambulist, or have fallen under one of those indubitable but hitherto inexplicable influences that we call suggestions. However that may be, my disorder came very near to lunacy, and 24 hours in Paris have been enough to restore my balance. Yesterday I went to the races and made various calls. I felt myself endowed with new vital strength, and I ended my evening at the Théâtre Français. They were presenting a play by the younger Dumas, and his alert, forceful intelligence completed my cure. There can be no doubt that loneliness is dangerous to active minds. We need round us men who think and talk. When we live alone for long periods, we people the void with phantoms. I returned to the hotel in high spirits, walking along the boulevards. Amid the jostling of the crowd, I thought ironically on my terrors, on my hallucinations of a week ago, when I had believed, yes, believed that an invisible being dwelt in my body. How weak and shaken and speedily unbalanced our brains are immediately they are confronted by a tiny, incomprehensible fact. Instead of coming to a conclusion in these simple words, I do not understand because the cause eludes me. At once we imagine frightening mysteries and supernatural powers. July 14th. Fête de la République. I walked through the streets. The rockets and the flags filled me with a childish joy. At the same time, it is vastly silly to be joyous on a set day by order of the government. The mob is an imbecile herd, as stupid in its patience as it is savage when roused. You say to it, enjoy yourself, and it enjoys itself. You say to it, go and fight your neighbor. It goes to fight. You say to it, vote for the emperor. It votes for the emperor. Then you say to it, vote for the republic, and it votes for the republic. Its rulers are as besotted, but instead of obeying men, they obey principles, which can only be half-baked, sterile, and false in so much as they are principles. That is to say, ideas reputed certain and immutable. In this world where nothing is sure, since light and sound are both illusions. July 16th. Yesterday I saw some things that have profoundly disturbed me. I dined with my cousin, Madame Sable, whose husband commands the 76th Light Horse at Limoges. At her house I met two young women, one of whom has married a doctor, Dr. Perrin, who devotes himself largely to nervous illnesses and the extraordinary discoveries that are the outcome of the recent experiments in hypnotism and suggestion. He told us at length about the amazing results obtained by English scientists and by the doctors of the Nancy School. The facts that he put forward struck me as so fantastic that I confessed myself utterly incredulous. We are, he declared, on the point of discovering one of the most important secrets of nature. I mean, one of the most important secrets on this earth, for there are certain others as important away yonder, in the stars. Since man began to think, since he learned to express and record his thoughts, he has felt the almost impalpable touch of a mystery impenetrable by his clumsy and imperfect senses, and he has tried to supplement the impotence of his organic powers by the force of his intelligence. While this intelligence was still in a rudimentary stage, this haunting sense of invisible phenomena clothed itself in terrors such as occurred to simple minds. Thus are born popular theories of the supernatural, the legends of wandering spirits, fairies, gnomes, ghosts. I'll add the god myth itself, since our conceptions of the artificer creator, to whatever religion they belong, are really the most uninspired, the most unintelligent, the most unacceptable products of the fear-clouded brain of human beings. Nothing is truer than that saying of Voltaire's, God has made man in his image, but man has retorted upon him in kind. But for a little over a century, we have had glimpses of a new knowledge. Mesmer and others have set our feet on a fresh path, and, more specifically, during the last 4 or 5 years, we have actually reached surprising results. My cousin, as incredulous as I, smiled. Dr. Perrin said to her, "Shall I try to put you to sleep, madam?" "Yes, do." She seated herself in an armchair, and he looked fixedly into her eyes, as if he were trying to fascinate her. As for me, I felt suddenly uneasy. My heart thumped, my throat contracted. I saw Madame Sable's eyes grow heavy, her mouth twitch, her bosom rise and fall with her quick breathing. Within 10 minutes, she was asleep. "Go behind her," said the doctor. I seated myself behind her. He put a visiting card in her hand and said to her, "Here is a looking glass. What can you see in it?" "I see my cousin," she answered. "What is he doing?" "He is twisting his mustache. And now, he is drawing a photograph from his pocket." "Whose photograph is it?" "His." She was right, and this photograph had been sent me at my hotel only that very evening. "What is he doing in the photograph?" "He is standing, with his hat in his hand." Evidently, she saw in this card this piece of white pasteboard, as she would have seen in a glass. The young woman, terrified, cried, "That's enough. That's quite enough." But the doctor said authoritatively, "You will get up tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Then you will call your cousin at his hotel, and you will beg him to lend you 5,000 francs that your husband has asked you to get, and will exact on his next leave." Then he woke her up. On my way back to the hotel, I thought about this curious seance, and I was assailed by doubts. Not of the absolutely unimpeachable good faith of my cousin, whom since our childhood I had looked upon as my sister, but of the possibility of trickery on the doctor's part. Had he concealed a looking-glass in his hand and held it before the slumbering young woman when he was holding before her his visiting card? Professional conjurers do things as strange. I had reached the hotel by now, and I went to bed. Then in the morning, towards 8:30, I was roused by my man, who said to me, "Madame Sable wishes to speak to you at once, sir." I got hurriedly into my clothes and had her shown in. She seated herself, very agitated, her eyes downcast, and without lifting her veil said, "I have a great favor to ask you, my dear cousin." "What is it, my dear?" "I hate to ask it of you, and yet I must. I need, desperately, 5,000 francs. You need it?" "Yes, or rather my husband, who has laid it on me to get it." I was so astounded that I stammered as I answered her. I wondered whether she and Dr. Perrin were not actually making fun of me, whether it weren't a little comedy they had prepared beforehand and were acting very well. But as I watched her closely, my doubts vanished entirely. The whole affair was so distasteful to her that she was shaking with anguish, and I saw her throat was quivering with sobs. I knew that she was very rich, and I added, "What? Do you mean to say that your husband can't call on 5,000 francs? Come, think. Are you sure he told you to ask me for it?" She hesitated for a few moments, as if she were making a tremendous effort to search her memory. Then she answered, "Yes. Yes, I'm quite sure. Has he written you?" She hesitated again, reflecting, I guess, at the tortured striving of her mind. She didn't know. She knew nothing except that she had to borrow 5,000 francs from me for her husband. Then she plucked up courage to lie. "Yes, he has written to me. But when? You didn't speak to me about it yesterday. I got his letter this morning. Can you let me see it?" "No, no, no. It is very intimate, too personal. I've I've burned it. Your husband must be in debt then." Again she hesitated, then answered, "I don't know." I told her abruptly, "The fact is, I can't lay my hands on 5,000 francs at the moment, my dear." A kind of agonized wail broke from her. "Oh, I implore you, get it for me." She grew dreadfully excited, clasping her hands as if she were praying to me. The tone of her voice changed as I listened. She wept, stammering, torn with grief, goaded by the irresistible command that had been laid on her. "Oh, I implore you to get it. If you knew how unhappy I am, I must have it today." I took pity on her. "You shall have it at once, I promise you." Thank you," she cried. "How kind you are. Do you remember," I went on, "what happened at your house yesterday evening?" "Yes." "Do you remember that Dr. Parent put you to sleep?" "Yes." "Very well. He ordered you to come this morning and borrow 5,000 francs from me, and you are now obeying the suggestion." She considered this for a moment and answered, "Because my husband wants it." I spent an hour trying to convince her, but I did not succeed in doing so. When she left, I ran to the doctor's house. He was just going out, and he listened to me with a smile. Then he said, "Now do you believe?" "I must. Let's go and call on your cousin." She was already asleep on a daybed, overwhelmed with weariness. The doctor felt her pulse and looked at her for some time, one hand lifted towards her eyes that slowly closed under the irresistible compulsion of his magnetic force. When she was asleep, "Your husband has no further need for 5,000 francs. You will forget that you begged your cousin to lend it to you, and if he speaks to you about it, you will not understand." Then he woke her up. I drew a note case from my pocket. "Here is what you asked me for this morning, my dear." She was so dumbfounded that I dared not press the matter. I did, however, try to rouse her memory, but she denied it fiercely, thought I was making fun of her, and at last was ready to be angry with me. Back at the hotel, the experience has disturbed me so profoundly that I could not bring myself to take lunch. July 19th. I have told several people about this adventure and have been laughed at for my pains. I don't know what to think now. The wise man says, perhaps. July 21st. I dined at the Bougival. Then I spent the evening at the rowing club dance. There's no doubt that everything is a question of places and persons. To believe in the supernatural in the island of Gonoye would be the height of folly, but at the top of Mont Saint Michael, in the Indies, we are terrified under the influence of our surroundings. I am going home next week. July 30th. I have been home since yesterday. All is well. August 2nd. Nothing fresh. The weather has been glorious. I spend my days watching the Seine run past. August 4th. The servants are quarreling among themselves. They declare that someone breaks the glasses in the cupboard at night. My man blames the cook, who blames the housemaid, who blames the other two. Who is the culprit? It would take a mighty clever man to find out. August 6th. This time I am not mad. I've seen something. I've seen something. I've seen something. I have no more doubts. I've seen it. I'm still cold to my fingertips. My nerves are still racked with terror. I've seen it. At 2 o'clock in broad daylight, I was walking in my rose garden, between the autumn roses that are just coming out. As I paused to look at a Giante Pataya, which bore 3 superb flowers, I distinctly saw, right under my eye, the stem of one of these roses bend as if an invisible hand had twisted it, then break as if the hand had plucked it, describing in the air the curve that an arm would have made carrying it towards a mouth. And it hung suspended in the clear air, quite alone, motionless, a terrifying scarlet splash 3 paces from my eyes. I lost my head and flung myself on it, grasping at it. My fingers closed on nothing. It had disappeared. Then I was filled with a savage rage against myself. A rational, serious-minded man simply does not have such hallucinations. But was it really an hallucination? I turned round to look for the flower, and my eyes fell on it immediately. It had just been broken off and was lying between the 2 roses that still remained on the branch. Then I went to the house, my senses reeling. Now I was sure, as sure as I am that day follows night, that there lived, at my side, an invisible being who fed on milk and water, who could touch things, take them, move them from one place to another, endowed therefore with a material nature, imperceptible to our senses though it was, and living beside me, under my roof. August 7th. I slept quietly. He has drunk the water from my carafe, but he did not disturb my sleep. I wonder if I am mad. Sometimes as I walk in the blazing sunshine along the river bank, I am filled with doubts of my sanity. Not the vague doubts I have been feeling, but precise and uncompromising doubts. I have seen madmen. I have known men who were intelligent, lucid, even exceptionally clear-headed in everything in life, but on one point, they talked quite clearly, easily, and profoundly about everything, until suddenly their mind ran onto the rocks of their madness and was there rent in pieces, strewn to the winds and foundered in the fearful raging sea, filled with surging waves, fogs, squalls, that we call insanity. I should certainly have thought myself mad, absolutely mad, if I were not conscious, if I were not perfectly aware of my state of mind, if I did not get to the bottom of it and analyze it with such complete clearness. I must be, in fact, no worse than a sane man troubled with hallucinations. There must be some unknown disturbance in my brain, one of those disturbances that modern physiologists are trying to observe and elucidate. And this disturbance has opened a deep gulf in my mind. In the orderly and logical working of my thoughts, similar phenomena take place in a dream that drags us through the most unreal phantasmagoria without sowing the least surprise in our minds, because the mechanism of judgment, the controlling censor, is asleep, while the imaginative faculty wakes and works. Can one of the invisible strings that control my mental keyboard have become muted? Sometimes, after an accident, a man loses his power to remember proper names or verbs or figures or only dates. The localization of all the different faculties of the mind is now proved. Is there anything surprising, therefore, in the idea that my power of examining the unreality of certain hallucinations has ceased to function in my brain just now? I thought of all this as I walked by the side of the water. The sunlight flung a mantle of light across the river, clothing the earth with beauty, filling my thoughts with love of life, of the swallows whose swift flight is a joy to my eyes, of the riverside grasses whose shuddering whisper contents my ears. Little by little, however, I fell prey to an inexplicable uneasiness. I felt as though some force, An occult force was paralyzing my movements, halting me, hindering me from going on any further, calling me back. I was oppressed by such an unhappy impulse to turn back, as one feels when a beloved person has been left at home ill, and one is possessed by a foreboding that the illness has taken a turn for the worse. So in spite of myself, I turned back, sure that I should find bad news waiting in my house. So in spite of myself, I turned back, sure that I would find bad news waiting in my house. A letter or a telegram. There was nothing, and I was left more surprised and uneasy than if I had had yet another fantastic vision. August 8th. Yesterday I spent a frightful night. He did not manifest himself again, but I felt him near me, spying on me, watching me, taking possession of me, dominating me, and more to be feared when he hid himself in this way than if he gave notice of his constant invisible presence by supernatural phenomenon. However, I slept. August 9th. Nothing, but I am afraid. August 10th. Nothing. What will happen tomorrow? August 11th. Still nothing. I can't remain in my home any longer. With this fear and these thoughts in my mind, I shall go away. August 12th, 10 o'clock in the evening. I have been waiting to go away all day. I can't. I have been wanting to carry out the easy, simple act that will set me free. Go out, get into my carriage to go to Rouen. I can't. Why? August 13th. Under the affliction of certain maladies, all the resources of one's physical being seem crushed, all one's energy exhausted, one's muscles relaxed, one's bones grown as soft as flesh, and one's flesh turned to water. In a strange and wretched fashion, I suffer all these pains in my spiritual being. I have no strength, no courage, no control over myself, no power even to summon up my will. I can will nothing, but someone wills for me, and I obey. August 14th. I am lost. Someone has taken possession of my soul and is master of it. Someone orders all my acts, all my movements, all my thoughts. I am no longer anything. I am only a spectator, enslaved and terrified by all the things I do. I wish to go out. I cannot. He does not wish it, and I remain dazed, trembling, in the armchair where he keeps me seated. I desire no more than to get up, to raise myself, so that I can think I am master of myself again. I can't do it. I am riveted to my seat, and my seat is fast to the ground in such fashion that no force could lift us. Then, all at once, I must go to the bottom of my garden and pick strawberries and eat them. Oh my God, my God, my God, is there a God? If there is one, deliver me, save me, help me, pardon me, pity me, have mercy on me, how I suffer, how I am tortured, how terrible this is. August 15th. Well, think how my poor cousin was possessed and overmastered when she came to borrow 5,000 francs from me. She submitted to an alien will that had entered into her as if it were another soul, a parasitic, tyrannical soul. Is the world coming to an end? But what is this being, this invisible being who is ruling me, this unknowable creature, this wanderer from a supernatural race? So unseen ones exist. Then why is it that since the world began, they have never manifested themselves in so unmistakable a fashion as they are now manifesting themselves to me? I have never read of anything like the things that are happening under my roof. If I can only leave it, if I could go away, fly far away and return no more, I should be saved. But I can't. August 16th. Today I was able to escape for 2 hours, like a prisoner who finds the door of his cell accidentally left open. I felt that I was suddenly set free. that he had withdrawn himself. I ordered the horses to be put in the carriage as quickly as possible, and I reached Rouen. Oh, what a joy it was to find myself able to tell a man, "Go to Rouen," and be obeyed. I stopped at the library and asked them to lend me the long treatise of Dr. Hermann Herestauss on the unseen inhabitations of the antique and modern worlds. Then, just as I was getting back into my carriage, with the words, "To the station," on my lips, I shouted. I didn't speak. I shouted in a voice so loud that the passer-by turned round. "Home," and I fell, overwhelmed with misery, onto the cushions of my carriage. He had found me again and taken possession once more. August 17th. What a night! What a night! Nevertheless, it seems to me that I ought to congratulate myself. I read until 1 o'clock in the morning. Hermann Herstauss, a doctor of philosophy and theogony, has written an account of all the invisible beings who wander among men or have been imagined by men's minds. He describes their origins, their domains, their power, but none of them is the least like the being who haunts me. It is as if man, the thinker, has had a foreboding vision of some new being, mightier than himself, who shall succeed him in this world, and in his terror, feeling him draw near and unable to guess at the nature of this master, he has created all the fantastic crowd of occult beings, dim phantoms born of fear. Well, I read until 1 o'clock, and then I seated myself near my open window to cool my head and my thoughts in the gentle air of night. It was fine and warm. In other days, how I should have loved such a night. No moon. The stars wavered and glittered in the black depths of the sky. Who dwells in these worlds? What forms of life? What living creatures? What animals or plants do they hold? What more than we do the thinkers in those far-off universes know? What more can they do than we? What do they see that we do not know of? Perhaps one of them, some day or other, will cross the gulf of space and appear on our earth as a conqueror, just as in olden days the Normans crossed the sea to subdue wealthy nations. We others are so infirm, so defenseless, so ignorant, so small. On this grain of dust that revolves and crumbles in a drop of water, so dreaming, I fell asleep in the fresh evening air. I slept for about 40 minutes and opened my eyes again without moving, roused by I know not what vague and strange emotions. At first I saw nothing. Then, all at once, I thought that the page of a book lying open on my table had turned over of itself. Not a breath of air came in at the window. I was surprised, and I sat waiting. About 4 minutes later, I saw, yes, I saw with my own eyes another page come up and turn back on the preceding one, as if a finger had folded it back. My armchair was empty, seemed empty, but I realized that he was there, sitting in my place, and reading. In one wild spring, like the spring of a maddened beast resolved to eviscerate his trainer, I crossed the room to seize him and crush him and kill him. But before I had reached it, my seat turned right over as if he had fled before me. My table rocked, my lamp fell and was extinguished, and my window slammed shut as if I had surprised a malefactor who had flung himself out into the darkness, tugging at the sashes with all his force. So he had run away. He had been afraid of me. Me. Then, tomorrow, or the day after, or someday, I should be able to get him between my fingers and crush him against the ground. Don't dogs sometimes bite and fly at their masters' throats? August 18th. I've been thinking things over all day. Oh yes, I'll obey him, satisfy his impulses, do his will, make myself humble, submissive, servile. He is stronger, but an hour will come. August 19th. I know now. I know I know everything. I have just read the following in the Rayon du Monde Scientifique. A strange piece of news reaches us from Rio de Janeiro. Madness, an epidemic of madness, comparable to the contagious outbursts of dementia that attacked the peoples of Europe in the Middle Ages, is raging at this day in the districts of Sao Paulo. The distracted inhabitants are quitting their houses, deserting their villages, abandoning their fields, declaring themselves to be pursued, possessed, and ordered about like a human herd by certain invisible but tangible beings, vampires of some kind, who feed on their vitality while they sleep, in addition to drinking milk and water without apparently touching any other form of food. Professor Don Pedro Henriquez, accompanied by several learned doctors, has set out for the district of Sao Paulo to study on the spot the origins and the forms taken by this surprising madness, and to suggest to the emperor such measures as appeared to him most likely to restore the delirious inhabitants to sanity. Ah, I remember. I remember the lovely three-masted Brazilian that sailed past my windows on the 8th of last May. On her way up the Seine, I thought her such a bonny, white, gay boat. The being was on board her, come from over the sea, where his race is born. He saw me. He saw my house, white like the ship, and he jumped from the vessel to the bank. Oh my God. Now I know. I understand. The reign of man is at an end. He is here, whom the dawning fears of primitive peoples taught them how to dread. He who was exorcised by troubled priests, evoked in the darkness of night by wizards who yet never saw him materialize, to whom the foreboding vision of the masters who have passed through this world lent all the monstrous or gracious forms of gnomes, spirits, jinns, fairies, and hobgoblins. Primitive terror visualized him in the crudest forms. Later, wise men have seen him more clearly. Mesmers foresaw him, and it is 10 years since doctors made the most exact inquiries into the nature of his power. Even before he exercised it himself, they have been making a plaything of this weapon of the new god, this imposition of a mysterious will on the enslaved soul of man. They called it magnetism, hypnotism, suggestion, anything you like. I have seen them amusing themselves with this horrible power like foolish children. Woe to us! Cursed is man. He is here. The, what is his name? It seemed as if he were shouting his name in my ear and I cannot hear it. Yes, he is shouting it. I am listening. I can't hear. Again, tell me again. The Horla. I heard the Horla. It is he, the Horla. He is here. Oh, the vulture has been used to eat the dove, the wolf to eat the sheep, the lion to devour the sharp-horned buffalo, man to kill the lion with arrow, spear, and gun. But the Horla is going to make of man what we have made of the horse and the cow, his thing, his servant, and his food, by the mere force of his will. Woe to us. But sometimes the beast rebels and kills his tamer. I too want. I could. But I must know him, touch him, see him. Scientists say that the eye of the beast is not like ours and does not see as ours does. And my eye fails to show me this newcomer who is oppressing me. Why? Oh, the words of the monk of Mont Saint Michael come to my mind. Do we see the 100,000th part of all that exists? Think, there's the wind, the greatest force in nature, which throws down men, shatters buildings, uproots trees, stirs up the sea into watery mountains, destroys cliffs, and tosses the tall ships against the shore. The wind that kills, whistles, groans, roars. Have you seen it? Can you see it? Nevertheless, it exists. And I consider further, my eye is so weak, so imperfect, that it does not distinguish even solid bodies that have the transparency of glass. If a looking glass that has no foil backing bars my path, I hurl myself against it as a bird that has got into a room breaks its head on the window pane. How many other things deceive and mislead my eye? Then what is there to be surprised at in its failure to see a new body that offers no resistance to the passage of light? A new being? Why not? He must assuredly come. Why should we be the last? Why is he not seen of our eyes, as are all the beings created before us? Because his form is nearer perfection, his body finer and completer than ours, which is so weak, so clumsily conceived, encumbered by organs, always tired, always breaking down, like a too complex mechanism which lives like a vegetable or a beast, drawing its substance with difficulty from the air, the herbs of the field and meat, a living machine subject to sickness, deformity, and corruption, drawing its breath in pain, ill-regulated, simple and fantastic, ingeniously ill-made, clumsily and delicately erected, the mere rough sketch of a being who could become intelligent and noble. There have been so few kinds created in the world, from the bivalve to man. Why not one more? When we reach the end of the period of time that separates each successive appearance of a species from that which appeared before it, why not one more? Why not also new kinds of trees bearing monstrous flowers, blazing with color and filling all the courtside with their perfume? Why not other elements than fire, air, earth, and water? There are four, only four sources of our being. What a pity. Why not 40, 400, 4,000? How poor, stingy, and brutish is life, grudgingly given, meanly conceived, stupidly executed. Consider the grace of the elephant, the hippopotamus, the elegance of the camel. You bid me consider the butterfly, a winged flower. I can imagine one vast as 100 worlds, with wings for whose shape, beauty, color, and sweep I cannot find any words. But I see it. It goes from star to star, refreshing and perfuming them with the soft, gracious wind of its passing, and the people of the upper air watch it pass in an ecstasy of joy. What is the matter with me? It is he, the Horla, who is haunting me, filling my head with these absurdities. He is in me. He has become my soul. I will kill him. August 19th. I will kill him. I have seen him. I was sitting at my table yesterday evening making a great show of being very absorbed in writing. I knew quite well that he would come and prowl round me, very close to me, so close that I might be able to touch him, seize him perhaps, and then I should be filled with the strength of desperation. I should have hands, knees, chest, face, teeth to strangle him, crush him, tear him, rend him. With every sense quiveringly alert, I watched for him. I had lit both my lamps and the 8 candles on my chimney piece, as if I thought I should be more likely to discover him by this bright light. In front of me was my bed, an old oak 4-poster. On my right, the fireplace. On my left, my door, carefully shut after I had left it open for a long time to attract him. Behind me, a very tall cupboard with a mirror front, which I used every day to shave and dress by, and in which I always regarded myself from head to foot whenever I passed in front of it. Well, I pretended to write to deceive him, because he was spying on me too. And all at once, I felt I was certain that he was reading over my shoulder, that he was there, his breath on my ear. I stood up, my hand outstretched, and turned round so quickly that I almost fell. What do you think? The room was as light as day, and I could not see myself in my looking glass. It was empty, transparent, deep, filled with light. I was not reflected in it, and I was standing in front of it. I could see the wide, limpid expanses of glass from top to bottom, and I stared at it with a distraught gaze. I daredn't move another step. I daredn't make another movement. Nevertheless, I felt that he was there, whose immaterial body had swallowed up my reflection, but that he would elude me still. How frightened I was. A moment later, my reflection began to appear in the depths of the looking glass, in a sort of mist, as if I were looking at it through water. This water seemed to flow from left to right, slowly, so that moment by moment my reflection emerged more distinctly. It was like the passing of an eclipse. The thing that was concealing me appeared to possess no sharply defined outlines, but a kind of transparent opacity that gradually cleared. At last I could see myself from head to foot, just as I saw myself every day when I looked in the glass. I had seen him. The horror of it is still on me, making me shudder. August 20th. How can I kill him, since I can't touch him? Poison? But he would see me put it in the water. And besides, would our poisons affect an immaterial body? No. No, they certainly would not. Then how? How? August 21st. I have sent for a locksmith from Rouen and ordered him to fit my room with iron shutters, such as they have in certain hotels in Paris, to keep out robbers. He is to make me also a similar sort of door. Everyone thinks me a coward, but much I care for that. September 10th. Rouen Hotel Continental. It is done. It is done. But is he dead? My brain reels with what I have seen. Yesterday the locksmith put up my iron shutters and my iron door, and I left everything open until midnight, although it began to get cold. All at once I felt his presence, and I was filled with joy, a mad joy. I rose slowly to my feet and walked about the room for a long time, so that he should suspect nothing. Then I took off my boots and carelessly drew on my slippers. Then I closed my iron shutters and sauntered back towards the door. I double locked it too. Then I walked back to the window and secured it with a padlock, putting the key in my pocket. Suddenly I realized that he was prowling anxiously around me. He was afraid now and condemning me to open them for him. I almost yielded. I did not yield. But, leaning on the door, I set it ajar, just wide enough for me to slip out backwards, and as I am very tall, my head touched the lintel. I was sure that he could not have got out, and I shut him in, alone, all alone. Thank God. I had him. Then I ran downstairs. In the drawing room, which is under my room, I took both my lamps and emptied the oil all over the carpet and the furniture, everything. Then I set it on fire, and I fled after having double locked the main door. And I went and hid myself at the bottom of my garden in a grove of laurels. How long it took! How long! Everything was dark, silent, still not a breath of air, not a star. Mountains of unseen clouds that lay so heavily on my spirit. I kept my gaze fixed on my house and waited. How long it took! I was beginning to think that the fire had died out of itself, or that he had put it out, when one of the lower windows fell in under the fierce breath of the fire, and a flame, a great red and yellow flame, a long, curling, caressing flame, leaped up the white wall and pressed its kiss on the roof itself. A flood of light poured over trees, branches, leaves, and with that a shudder of fear ran through them. The birds woke, a dog howled. I thought that dawn was at hand. In a moment, 2 more windows burst into flame, and I saw that the lower half of my house was now one frightful furnace. But a cry, a frightful, piercing, agonized cry, a woman's cry, stabbed the night, and the 2 skylights opened. I had forgotten my servants. I saw their distraught faces and their wildly waving arms. Then, frantic with horror, I began to run towards the village shouting, "Help! Help! Fire! Fire!" I met people already on their way to the house, and I turned back with them to look at it. By now, the house was no more than a horrible and magnificent funeral pyre, a monstrous pyre lighting up the whole earth, a pyre that was consuming men and consuming him, my prisoner, the new being, the new master, the Horla. The whole roof fell in with a sudden crash, and a volcano of flames leaped to the sky. Through all the windows open on the furnace, I saw the fiery vat, and I reflected that he was there, in this oven, dead. Dead, perhaps. His body, perhaps that body through which light fell, could not be destroyed by the methods that kill our bodies. Suppose he is not dead. Perhaps only time has power over the invisible and dreadful one. Why should this transparent, unknowable body, this body of the spirit, fear sickness, wounds, infirmity, premature destruction? Premature destruction, the source of all human dread. After man, the Horla. After him, who can die any day, any hour, any moment, by accidents of all kinds, come he who can only die in his appointed day, hour, and moment, when he has attained the limit of his existence. No, no, I know, he is not dead. So, I must kill myself now. Hibbert, always conscious of two worlds, was in this mountain village conscious of three. It lay on the slopes of the Valais Alps, and he had taken a room in the little post office where he could be at peace to write his book, yet at the same time enjoy the winter sports and find companionship in the hotel when he wanted it. The three worlds that met and mingled here seemed to his imaginative temperament very obvious, although it is doubtful if another mind, less intuitively equipped, would have seen them so well defined. There was the world of tourist English, civilized, quasi-educated, to which he belonged by birth. At any rate, there was the world of peasants, to which he felt himself drawn by sympathy, for he loved and admired their toiling, simple life. And there was this other, which he could only call the world of nature. To this last, however, in virtue of the vehement poetic imagination and a tumultuous pagan instinct fed by his very blood, he felt that most of him belonged. The others borrowed from it, as it were, for visits. Here, with the soul of nature, hid his central life. Between all three was conflict, potential conflict. On the skating rink each Sunday, the tourists regarded the natives as intruders. In the church, the peasants plainly questioned, "Why do you come? We are here to worship." You, to stare and whisper, for neither of these two worlds accepted the other, and neither did nature accept the tourists, for it took advantage of their least mistakes, and indeed, even of the peasant world, accepted only those who were strong and bold enough to invade her savage domain with sufficient skill to protect themselves from several forms of death. Now Hibbert was keenly aware of this potential conflict and one of harmony. He felt outside, yet caught by it, torn in the three directions because he was partly of each world, but wholly in only one. There grew in him a constant, subtle effort, or at least desire, to unify them and decide positively to which he should belong and live in. The attempt, of course, was largely subconscious. It was the natural instinct of a richly imaginative nature seeking the point of equilibrium so that the mind could feel at peace and his brain be free to do good work. Among the guests, no one especially claimed his interest. The men were nice but undistinguished athletic schoolmasters, doctors snatching a holiday, good fellows all. The women, equally various, the clever, The would-be fast, the dare to be dull, the women who understood, and the usual pack of jolly dancing girls and flappers. And Hibbert, with his 40-odd years of thick experience behind him, got on well with the lot. He understood them all. They belonged to definite, predigested types that are all the same the world over, and that he had met the world over long ago. But to none of them did he belong. His nature was too multiple to subscribe to the set of shibboleths of any one class, and since all liked him and felt that somehow he seemed outside of them, spectator, looker-on, all sought to claim him. In a sense, therefore, the three worlds fought for him: natives, tourists, nature. It was thus begun the singular conflict for the soul of Hibbert. In his own soul, however, it took place. Neither the peasants nor the tourists were conscious that they fought for anything, and nature, they say, is merely blind and automatic. It is a mistake on my part to have realized that there is any conflict at all, he thought, as he crunched home over the snow at midnight after one of the dances. It would have been better to have kept outside it all and done my work. Better, he added, looking back down the silent village street to the church tower. And safer. The adjective slipped from his mind before he was aware of it. He turned with an involuntary start and looked about him. He knew perfectly well what it meant. This thought that had thrust its head up from the instinctive region, he understood, without being able to express it fully, the meaning that betrayed itself in the choice of the adjective. For if he had ignored the existence of this conflict, he would at the same time have remained outside the arena, whereas now he had entered the lists. Now this battle for his soul must have issue, and he knew that the spell of nature was greater for him than all other spells in the world combined, greater than love, revelry, pleasure, greater even than study. He had always been afraid to let himself go. His pagan soul dreaded her terrific powers of witchery. Even while he worshipped, the little village already slept. The world lay smothered in snow. The chalet roofs shone white beneath the moon, and pitch black shadows gathered against the walls of the church. His eyes rested a moment on the square stone tower with its frosted cross that pointed to the sky, then traveled with a leap of many thousand feet to the enormous mountains that brushed the brilliant stars. Like a forest rose the huge peaks above the slumbering village, measuring the night and heavens. They beckoned him, and something born of the snowy desolation, born of the midnight and the silent grandeur, born of the great listening hollows of the night, something that lay twixt terror and wonder, dropped from the vast wintry space down into his heart and called him, very softly, unrecorded in any word or thought his brain could compass. It laid its spell upon him. Fingers of snow brushed the surface of his heart. The power and quiet majesty of the winter's night appalled him. Fumbling a moment with the big unwieldy key, he let himself in and went upstairs to bed. Two thoughts went with him, apparently quite ordinary and sensible ones. What fools these peasants are to sleep through such a night. And the other, those dances tire me. I'll never go again. My work only suffers in the morning. The claims of peasants and tourists upon him seemed thus in a single instant weakened. The clash of battle troubled half his dreams. Nature had sent her beauty of the night and won the first assault. The others, rooted and dismayed, fled far away. Don't go back to your dreary old post office. We're going to have supper in my room, something hot. Come and join us. Hurry up. There had been an ice carnival, and the last party, tailing up the snow slope to the hotel, called him. The Chinese lanterns smoked and sputtered on the wires. The band had long since gone. The cold was bitter, and the moon came only momentarily between the high, driving clouds. From the shed where the people changed from skates to snow boots, he shouted something to the effect that he was following, but no answer came. The moving shadows of those who had called were already merged high up against the village darkness. The voices died away. Doors slammed. Hibbert found himself alone on the deserted rink, and it was then, quite suddenly, the impulse came to stay and skate alone. The thought of the stuffy hotel room and of those noisy people with their obvious jokes and laughter oppressed him. He felt a longing to be alone with the night, to taste her wonder all by himself, there beneath the stars, gliding over the ice. It was not yet midnight, and he could skate for half an hour. That supper party, if they noticed his absence at all, would merely think he had changed his mind and gone to bed. It was an impulse, yes, and not an unnatural one. Yet even at the time it struck him that something more than impulse lay concealed behind it, more than invitation, yet certainly less than command. There was a vague, queer feeling that he stayed because he had to, almost as though there was something he had forgotten, overlooked, left undone. Imaginative temperaments are often thus, and impulse is ever weakness, for with such ill-considered opening of the doors to hasty action may come and invade other forces at the same time, forces merely waiting their opportunity perhaps. He caught the fugitive warning even while he dismissed it as absurd, and the next minute he was whirling over the smooth ice in delightful curves and loops beneath the moon. There was no fear of collision. He could take his own speed in space as he willed. The shadows of the towering mountains fell across the rink, and a wind of ice came from the forests, where the snow lay 10 feet deep. The hotel lights winked and went out. The village slept. The high wire netting could not keep out the wonder of the winter night that grew about him like a presence. He skated on and on, keen exhilarating pleasure in his tingling blood, and weariness all forgotten. And then, midway in the delight of rushing movement, he saw a figure gliding behind the wire netting, watching him, with a start that almost made him lose his balance, for the abruptness of the new arrival was so unlooked for. He paused and stared. Although the light was dim, he made out that it was the figure of a woman, and that she was feeling her way along the netting, trying to get in. Against the white background of the snowfield, he watched her rather stealthy efforts as she passed with a silent step over the banked-up snow. She was tall and slim and graceful. He could see that even in the dark. And then, of course, he understood. It was another adventurous skater like himself, stolen down unawares from the hotel or chalet, and searching for the opening. At once, making a sign and pointing with one hand, he turned swiftly and skated over to the little entrance on the other side. But even before he got there was a sound on the ice behind him, and, with an exclamation of amazement he could not suppress, he turned to see her swerving up to his side across the width of the rink. She had somehow found another way in. Hibbert, as a rule, was punctilious, and in these free and easy places, perhaps, especially so, if only for his own protection. He did not seek to make advances unless some kind of introduction paved the way, but for these two to skate together in the semi-darkness without speech, often of necessity brushing shoulders almost, was too absurd to think of. Accordingly, he raised his cap and spoke. His actual words he seemed unable to recall, nor what the girl said in reply, except that she answered in accented English with some commonplace about doing figures at midnight on an empty rink. Quite natural it was, and right. She wore grey clothes of some kind, though not the customary long gloves or sweater, for indeed her hands were bare, and presently when he skated with her, he wondered with something like astonishment at their dry and icy coldness. And she was delicious to skate with, supple, sure and light, fast as a man, yet with the freedom of a child, sinuous and steady at the same time. Her flexibility made him wonder, and when he asked where she had learned, she murmured. He caught the breath against his ear and recalled later that it was singularly cold, that she could hardly tell, for she had been accustomed to the ice ever since she could remember. But her face he never properly saw. A muffler of white fur buried her neck to the ears, and her cap came over the eyes. He only saw that she was young, nor could he gather her hotel or chalet, for she pointed vaguely when he asked her up the slopes. Just over there, she said, quickly taking his hand again. He did not press her. No doubt she wished to hide her escapade, and the touch of her hand thrilled him more than anything he could remember. Even through his thick glove he felt the softness of that cold and delicate softness. The clouds thickened over the mountains. It grew darker. They talked very little and did not always skate together. Often they separated, curving about the corners by themselves, but always coming together again in the center of the rink. And when she left him, thus Hibbert was conscious of missing her. He found a peculiar satisfaction, almost a fascination, in skating by her side. It was quite an adventure, these two strangers, with the ice and snow and night. Midnight had long since sounded from the old church tower before they parted. She gave the sign, and he skated quickly to the shed, meaning to find a seat and help her take her skates off. Yet when he turned, she had already gone. He saw her slim figure gliding across the snow, and hurrying for the last time round the rink alone. He searched in vain for the opening she had twice used in this curious way. How very queer, he thought, referring to the wire netting. She must have lifted it and wriggled under. Wondering how in the world she managed it, what in the world had possessed him to be so free with her, and who in the world she was. He went up the steep slope to the post office and so to bed, her promise to come again another night still ringing delightfully in his ears, and curious were the thoughts and sensations that accompanied him. Most of all, perhaps, was the half-suggestion of some dim memory that he had known this girl before, had met her somewhere, more that she knew him, for in her voice, a low, soft, windy little voice it was, tender and soothing for all its quiet coldness, there lay some faint reminder of two others he had known, both long since gone, the voice of a woman he had loved, and the voice of his mother. But this time, through his dreams, there ran no clash of battle. He was conscious, rather, of something cold and clinging that made him think of sifting snowflakes climbing slowly with entangling touch and thickness round his feet, the snow coming without noise, each flake so light and tiny none can mark the spot whereon it settles, yet the mass of it able to smother whole villages, wove through the very texture of his mind, cold, bewildering, deadening effort with its clinging network of 10 million feathery touches. In the morning, Hibbert realized he had done, perhaps, a foolish thing. The brilliant sunshine that drenched the valley made him see this, and the sight of his work table with its typewriter, books, papers, and the rest brought additional conviction. To have skated with a girl alone at midnight, no matter how innocently the thing had come about, was unwise, unfair, especially to her. Gossip in these little winter resorts was worse than in a provincial town. He hoped no one had seen them. Luckily, the night had been dark. Most likely, none had heard the ring of skates. Deciding that in the future he would be more careful, he plunged into work and sought to dismiss the matter from his mind. But in his times of leisure, the memory returned persistently to haunt him. When he skied, luged, or danced in the evenings, and especially when he skated on the little rink, he was aware that the eyes of his mind forever sought the strange companion of the night. 100 times he fancied that he saw her, but always sight deceived him. Her face he might not know, but he could hardly fail to recognize her figure. Yet nowhere among the others did he catch a glimpse of that slim young creature he had skated with alone beneath the clouded stars. He searched in vain. Even his inquiries as to the occupants of the private chalets brought no results. He had lost her, but the queer thing was that he felt as though she were somewhere close. He knew she had not really gone. While people came and left with every day, it never once occurred to him that she had left. On the contrary, he felt assured that they would meet again. This thought he never quite acknowledged. Perhaps it was the wish that fathered it only, and, even when he did meet her, it was a question how he would speak and claim acquaintance, or whether she would recognize himself. It might be awkward. He almost came to dread a meeting, though dread, of course, was far too strong a word to describe an emotion that was half delight, half wondering anticipation. Meanwhile, the season was in full swing. Hibbert felt in perfect health, worked hard, skied, skated, luged, and at night danced fairly often, in spite of his decision. This dance was, however, an act of subconscious surrender. It really meant he hoped to find her among the whirling couples. He was searching for her without quite acknowledging it to himself and the hotel world. Meanwhile, thinking it had won him over, teased and chaffed him. He made excuses in a similar vein, but all the time he watched and searched and waited. For several days the sky held clear and bright and frosty, bitterly cold, everything crisp and sparkling in the sun, but there was no sign of fresh snow, and the skiers began to grumble. On the mountains was an icy crust that made running dangerous. They wanted the frozen, dry, and powdery snow that makes for speed, renders steering easier and falling less severe. But the keen east wind showed no signs of changing for a whole 10 days. Then suddenly there came a touch of softer air, and the weather-wise began to prophesy. Hibbert, who was delicately sensitive to the least change in earth or sky, was perhaps the first to feel it. Only he did not prophesy. He knew through every nerve in his body that moisture had crept into the air, was accumulating, and that presently a fall would come. For he responded to the moods of nature like a fine barometer, and the knowledge, this time, brought into his heart a strange little wayward emotion that was hard to account for, a feeling of unexplained uneasiness and disquieting joy. For behind it, woven through it rather, ran a faint exhilaration that connected remotely somewhere with that touch of delicious alarm, that tiny anticipating dread that so puzzled him when he thought of his next meeting with his skating companion of the night. It lay beyond all words, all telling, this queer relationship between the two. But somehow the girl and snow ran in a pair across his mind, perhaps for imaginative writing men more than for other workers. The smallest change of mood betrays itself at once. His work, at any rate, revealed this slight shifting of emotional values in his soul. Not that his writing suffered, but that it altered subtly, as those changes of sky or sea or landscape that come with the passing of afternoon into evening. Imperceptibly, a subconscious excitement sought to push outwards and express itself. And, knowing the uneven effect such moods produced in his work, he laid his pen aside and took instead to reading that he had to do. Meanwhile, the brilliance passed from the sunshine. The sky grew slowly overcast. By dusk, the mountain tops came singularly close and sharp. The distant valley rose into absurdly near perspective. The moisture increased, rapidly approaching saturation point, when it must fall in snow. Hibbert watched and waited. And in the morning the world lay smothered beneath its fresh white carpet. It snowed heavily till noon, thickly, incessantly, chokingly, a foot or more. Then the sky cleared, the sun came out in splendor, the wind shifted back to the east, and the frost came down upon the mountains with its keenest and most biting tooth. The drop in the temperature was tremendous, but the skiers were jubilant. Next day the running would be fast and perfect. Already the mass was settling, and the surface freezing into those moss-like, powdery crystals that make the skiing runs almost of their own accord, with the faint shishing as of a bird's wings through the air. That night there was excitement in the little hotel world, first because there was a ball costume, but chiefly because the new snow had come, and Hibbert felt drawn to go. He did not go in costume, but he wanted to talk about the slopes and skiing with the other men, and at the same time, ah, there was the truth, the deeper necessity that called, for the singular connection between the stranger and the snow again betrayed itself, utterly beyond explanation as before, but vital and insistent. Some hidden instinct in his pagan soul, heaven knows how he phrased it even to himself, if he phrased it at all, whispered that with the snow the girl would be somewhere about, would emerge from her hiding place, would even look for him. Absolutely unwarranted it was. He laughed while he stood before the little glass and trimmed his mustache, tried to make his black tie sit straight, and shook down his dinner jacket so that it should lie upon his shoulders without a crease. His brown eyes were very bright. I look younger than I usually do, he thought. It was unusual, even significant, in a man who had no vanity about his appearance and certainly never questioned his age or tried to look younger than he was. Affairs of the heart, with one tumultuous exception that left no fuel for lesser subsequent fires, had never troubled him. The forces of his soul and mind, not called upon for work and obvious duties, all went to nature. The desolate, wild places of the earth were what he loved. Night, and the beauty of the stars and snow, and this evening he felt their claims upon him mightily stirring. A raising wildness caught his blood, quickened his pulse, woke longing and passion too. But chiefly snow. The snow whirred softly through his thoughts like white, seductive dreams. For the snow had come, and she, it seemed, had somehow come with it into his mind. And yet he stood before that twisted mirror and pulled his tie and coat askew a dozen times, as though it mattered. What in the world is up with me? He thought, then laughed a little. He turned before leaving the room to put his private papers in order. The green morocco desk that held them he took down from the shelf and laid it upon the table. Tied to the lid was the visiting card with his brother's London address in case of accident. On the way down to the hotel, he wondered why he had done this, for though imaginative, he was not the kind of man who dealt in presentiments. Moods with him were strong, but ever held in leash. It's almost like a warning, he thought, smiling. He drew his thick coat tightly round the throat as the freezing air bit at him. Those warnings one reads of in stories sometimes. A delicious happiness was in his blood. Over the edge of the hills across the valley rose the moon. He saw her silver sheet, the world of snow. Snow covered all. It smothered sound and distance. It smothered houses, streets, and human beings. It smothered life. In the hall there was light and bustle. People were already arriving from the other hotels and chalets, their costumes hidden beneath many wraps. Groups of men in evening dress stood about smoking, talking snow and skiing. The band was tuning up. The claims of the hotel world clashed about him faintly as of old. At the big glass windows of the veranda, peasants stopped a moment on their way home from the cafe pier. Hibbert thought laughingly of that conflict he used to imagine. He laughed because it suddenly seemed so unreal. He belonged so utterly to nature and the mountains, and especially to those desolate slopes where now the snow lay thick and fresh and sweet, that there was no question of a conflict at all. The power of the newly fallen snow had caught him, proving it without effort. Out there, upon those lonely reaches of the moonlit ridges, the snow lay ready, masses and masses of it, cold, soft, and inviting. He longed for it. It awaited him. He thought of the intoxicating delight of skiing in the moonlight. Thus, somehow, in vivid flashing vision, he thought of it while he stood there smoking with the other men and talking all the shop of skiing, and, ever mysteriously blended with this power of the snow, poured also through his inner being the power of the girl. He could not disabuse his mind of the insinuating presence of the two together. He remembered the queer skating impulse of 10 days ago, the impulse that he had let her in, that any mind, even an imaginative one, could pass beneath the sway of such a fancy was strange enough. And Hibbert, while fully aware of the disorder, yet found a curious joy in yielding to it. This insubordinate center that drew him towards old pagan beliefs had assumed command. With a kind of sensuous pleasure he let himself be conquered. And snow that night seemed in everybody's thoughts. The dancing couples talked of it. The hotel proprietors congratulated one another. It meant good sport and satisfied their guests. Everyone was planning trips and expeditions, talking of slopes and telemarks, of flying speed and distance, of drifts and crust and frost. Vitality and enthusiasm pulsed in the very air. All were alert and active, positive, radiating currents of creative life even into the stuffy atmosphere of that crowded ballroom, and the snow had caused it. The snow had brought it. All this discharge of eager, sparkling energy was due primarily to the snow. But in the mind of Hibbert, by some swift alchemy of his pagan yearnings, this energy became transmuted. It rarefied itself, gleaming in white and crystal currents of passionate anticipation, which he transferred, as by a species of electrical imagination, into the personality of the girl of the snow. She, somewhere, was waiting for him, expecting him, calling to him softly for those leagues of moonlit mountain. He remembered the touch of that cold, dry hand, the soft and icy breath against his cheek, the hush and softness of her presence in the way she came and the way she had gone again. Like a flurry of snow the wind sent gliding up the slopes. She, like himself, belonged out there. He fancied that he heard her little windy voice come sifting to him through the snowy branches of the trees, calling his name, that haunting little voice that dived straight to the center of his life as once, long years ago, two other voices used to do. But nowhere among the costumed dancers did he see her slender figure. He danced with one and all distraint and absent, a stupid partner, as each girl discovered, his eyes ever turning towards the door and windows, hoping to catch the luring face, the vision that did not come, and at length, hoping even against hope, for the ballroom thinned. Groups left, one by one, going home to their hotels and chalets. The band tired, obviously. People sat drinking lemon squashes at the little tables, the men mopping their foreheads, everyone ready for bed. It was close on midnight. As Hibbert passed through the hall to get his overcoat and snow boots, he saw men in the passage by the sport room, greasing their ski against an early start. Knapsack luncheons were being ordered by the kitchen swing doors. He sighed, lighting a cigarette a friend offered him. He returned a confused reply to some question as to whether he could join their party in the morning. It seemed he did not hear it properly. He passed through the outer vestibule, between the double glass doors, and went into the night. The man who asked the question watched him go, an expression of anxiety momentarily in his eyes. "Don't think he heard you," said another, laughing. "You've got to shout to Hibbert. His mind's so full of his work." "He works too hard," suggested the first, full of queer ideas and dreams. But Hibbert's silence was not rudeness. He had not caught the invitation. That was all. The call of the hotel world had faded. He no longer heard it. Another wilder call was sounding in his ears, for up the street he had seen a little figure moving. Close against the shadows of the baker's shop it glided, white, slim, enticing, and at once into his mind passed the hush and softness of the snow, yet with it a searching, crying wildness for the heights. He knew by some incalculable, swift instinct she would not meet him in the village street. It was not there, amid crowding houses. She would speak to him. Indeed, already she had disappeared, melted from view up the white vista of the moonlit road. Yonder, he divined, she waited where the highway narrowed abruptly into the mountain path beyond the chalets. It did not even occur to him to hesitate, mad though it seemed and was, this sudden craving for the heights with her, at least for open spaces where the snow lay thick and fresh. It was too imperious to be denied. He does not remember going up to his room, putting the sweater over his evening clothes, and getting into the fur gauntlet gloves and the helmet cap of wool. Most certainly he has no recollection of fastening on his skis. He must have done it automatically. Some faculty of normal observation was in abeyance, as it were. His mind was out beyond the village, out with the snowy mountains and the moon. Henry DeFango, putting up the shutters over his cafe windows, saw him pass, and wondered mildly, Un mesure qui fait du ski à citer. Il est anglais d'un. He shrugged his shoulders as though a man had the right to choose his own way of death. And Martha Parodi, the hunchback wife of the shoemaker, looking by chance from her window, caught his figure moving swiftly up the road. She had other thoughts, for she knew and believed the old traditions of the witches and snow beings that steal the souls of men. She had even heard, 'twas said, the dreaded synagogue pass roaring down the street at night, and now, as then, she hid her eyes. They've called to him, and he must go, she murmured, making the sign of the cross. But no one sought to stop him. Hibbert recalls only a single incident until he found himself beyond the houses, searching for her along the fringe of forest where the moonlight met the snow in a bewildering frieze of fantastic shadows. And the incident was simply this, that he remembered passing the church, catching the outline of its tower against the stars. He was aware of a faint sense of hesitation. A vague uneasiness came and went, jarred unpleasantly across the flow of his excited feelings. Chilling exhilaration. He caught the instinct's discord, dismissed it, and passed on. The seduction of the snow smothered the hint before he realized it had brushed the skirts of warning. And then he saw her. She stood there waiting in a little clear space of shining snow, dressed all in white, part of the moonlight and the glittering background, her slender figure just discernible. I waited, for I knew you would come. The silvery little voice of windy beauty floated down to him. You had to come. I'm ready, he answered. I knew it too. The world of nature caught him to its heart in those few words, the wonder and the glory of the night and snow. Life leaped within him. The passion of his pagan soul exulted, rose in joy, flowed out to her. He neither reflected nor considered, but let himself go like the Vericet schoolboy in the wildness of first love. Give me your hand, he cried. I'm coming. A little farther on, a little higher, came her delicious answer. Here it is too near the village and the church, and the words seemed wholly right and natural. He did not dream of questioning them. He understood that with this little touch of civilization in sight, the familiarity he suggested was impossible. Once out upon the open mountains, mid the freedom of huge slopes and towering peaks, the stars and moon to witness, and the wilderness of snow to watch, they could taste an innocent of happy intercourse, free from the dead conventions that imprison literal minds. He urged his pace, yet did not quite overtake her. The girl kept always just a little bit ahead of his best efforts, and soon they left the trees behind and passed on to the enormous slopes of the sea of snow that rolled in mountainous terror and beauty to the stars. The wonder of the white world caught him away. Under the steady moonlight, it was more than haunting. It was a living, white, bewildering power that deliciously confused the senses and laid a spell of wild perplexity upon the heart. It was a personality that cloaked and yet revealed itself through all this sheeted whiteness of snow. It rose, went with him, fled before, and followed after. Slowly it dropped lithe, gleaming arms around his neck, gathering him in. Certainly some soft persuasion coaxed his very soul, urging him ever forward, upwards, and towards the higher icy slopes. Judgment and reason left their throne, it seemed, completely, as in the madness of intoxication, the girl, slim and seductive, kept always just ahead, so that he never quite came up with her. He saw the white enchantment of her face and figure, something that streamed about her neck, flying like a wreath of snow in the wind, and heard the alluring accents of her whispering voice that called from time to time, "A little farther on, a little higher, then we'll run home together." Sometimes he saw her hand stretched out to find his own, but each time, just as he came up with her, he saw her still in front, the hand and arm withdrawn. They took a gentle angle of ascent. The toil seemed nothing. In this crystal, wine-like air fatigue vanished. The shishing of the skis through the powdery surface of the snow was the only sound that broke the stillness. This, with his breathing and the rustle of her skirts, was all he heard. Cold moonshine, snow, and silence held the world. The sky was black, and the peaks beyond cut into it like frosted wedges of iron and steel. Far below the valley slept. Far below the valley slept. The village long since hidden out of sight. He felt that he could never tire. The sound of the church clock rose from time to time, faintly through the air, more and more distant. "Give me your hand. It's time now to turn back. Just one more slope," she laughed. "That ridge above us, then we'll make for home." And her low voice mingled pleasantly with the purring of their ski. His own seemed harsh and ugly by comparison. "But I have never come so high before. It's glorious. This world of silent snow and moonlight. And you're a child of the snow. I swear, let me come up, closer, to see your face, and touch your little hand." Her laughter answered him. "Come on, a little higher. Here we are quite alone together. It's magnificent," he cried. "But why did you hide away so long? I've looked and searched for you in vain ever since we skated." He was going to say 10 days ago, but the accurate memory of time had gone from him. He was not sure whether it was days, or years, or minutes. His thoughts of earth were scattered and confused. "You looked for me in the wrong places," he heard her murmur just above him. "You looked in places where I never go. Hotels and houses kill me. I avoid them." She laughed. A fine, shrill, windy little laugh. "I loathe them too." He stopped. The girl had suddenly come quite close. A breath of ice passed through his very soul. She had touched him. "But this awful cold," he cried out sharply. "This freezing cold that takes me. The wind is rising. It's a wind of ice. Come, let us turn." But when he plunged forward to hold her, or at least to look, the girl was gone again, and something in the way she stood there a few feet beyond and stared down into his eyes so steadfastly in silence made him shiver. The moonlight was behind her, but in some odd way he could not focus sight upon her face, although so close. The gleam of eyes he caught, but all the rest seemed white and snowy, as though he looked beyond her, out into space. The sound of the church bell came up faintly from the valley far below, and he counted the strokes. 5. A sudden, curious weakness seized him as he listened. Deep within it was, deadly yet somehow sweet, and hard to resist. He felt like sinking down upon the snow and lying there. They had been climbing for 5 hours. It was, of course, the warning of complete exhaustion. With a great effort he fought and overcame it. It passed away as suddenly as it came. "We'll turn," he said, with a decision he hardly felt. It will be dawn before we reach the village again. Come at once. It's time for home. The sense of exhilaration had utterly left him. An emotion that was akin to fear swept coldly through him, but her whispering answer turned it instantly to terror, a terror that gripped him horribly and turned him weak and unresisting. Our home is here. A burst of wild, high laughter, loud and shrill, accompanied the words. It was like a whistling wind. The wind had risen, and clouds obscured the moon. A little higher, where we cannot hear the wicked bells, she cried, and for the first time seized him deliberately by the hand. She moved, was suddenly close against his face. Again she touched him, and Hibbert tried to turn away and escape, and so trying, found for the first time that the power of the snow, that other power which did not exhilarate but deadens effort, was upon him, the suffocating weakness that it brings to exhausted men, luring them to the sleep of death in her clinging soft embrace, lulling the will and conquering all desire for life. This was awfully upon him. His feet were heavy and entangled. He could not turn or move. The girl stood in front of him, very near. He felt her chilly breath upon his cheeks. Her hair passed blindingly across his eyes, and that icy wind came with her. He saw her whiteness close. Again, it seemed his sight passed through her into space as though she had no face. Her arms were round his neck. She drew him softly downwards to his knees. He sank. He yielded utterly. He obeyed. Her weight was upon him, smothering, delicious. The snow was to his waist. She kissed him softly on the lips, the eyes, all over his face. And then she spoke his name in that voice of love and wonder, the voice that held the accent of two others, both taken over long ago by death, the voice of his mother and of the woman he had loved. He made one more feeble effort to resist. Then, realizing even while he struggled that this soft weight about his heart was sweeter than anything life could ever bring, he let his muscles relax and sank back into the soft oblivion of the covering snow. Her wintry kisses bore him into sleep. They say that men who know the sleep of exhaustion in the snow find no awakening on the hither side of death. The hours passed and the moon sank below the white world's rim. Then, suddenly, there came a little crash upon his breast and neck, and Hibbert woke. He slowly turned bewildered, heavy eyes upon the desolate mountains, staring dizzily about him, tried to rise. At first, his muscles would not act. A numbing, aching pain possessed him. He uttered a long, thin cry for help, and heard its faintness swallowed by the wind. And then he understood vaguely why he was only warm, not dead, for this very wind that took his cry had built up a sheltering mound of driven snow against his body while he slept. Like a curving wave, it ran beside him. It was the breaking of its over-toppling edge that caused the crash, and the coldness of the mass against his neck that woke him. Pale gleams of gold shot every peak with splendor, but ice was in the air, and the dry and frozen snow blew like powder from the surface of the slopes. He saw the points of his ski projecting just below him. Then he remembered. It seemed he had just strength enough to realize that, could he but rise and stand, he might fly with terrific impetus towards the woods and village far beneath. The ski would carry him, but if he failed and fell, how he contrived it, Hibbert never knew. This fear of death somehow called out his whole available reserve force. He rose slowly, balanced a moment, then, taking the angle of an immense zigzag, started down the awful slopes like an arrow from a bow. And automatically the splendid muscles of the practiced skier and athlete saved and guided him, for he was hardly conscious of controlling either speed or direction. The snow stung face and eyes like fine steel shot. Ridge after ridge flew past, the summits raced across the sky. The valley leaped up with bounds to meet him. He scarcely felt the ground beneath his feet as the huge slopes and distance melted before the lightning speed of that descent from death to life. He took it in 4-mile-long zigzags, and it was the turning at each corner that nearly finished him. For then the strain of balancing taxed to the verge of collapse the remnants of his strength. Slopes that have taken hours to climb can be descended in a short half-hour on ski. But Hibbert had lost all count of time. Quite other thoughts and feelings mastered him in that wild, swift dropping through the air that was like the flight of a bird. Forever close upon his heels came following forms and voices with the whirling snow dust. He heard that little silvery voice of death and laughter at his back, shrill and wild, with the whistling of the wind past his ears. He caught its pursuing tones, but in anger now, no longer soft and coaxing, and it was accompanied. She did not follow alone. It seemed a host of these flying figures of the snow chased madly just behind him. He felt them furiously smite his neck and cheeks, snatch at his hands, and try to entangle his feet and ski in drifts. His eyes they blinded, and they caught his breath away. The terror of the heights and snow and winter desolation urged him forward in the maddest race with death a human being ever knew. And so terrific was the speed that before the gold and crimson had left the summits to touch the ice lips of the lower glaciers, he saw the friendly forest far beneath swing up and welcome him. And it was then, moving slowly across the edge of the woods, he saw a light. A man was carrying it. A procession of human figures was passing in a dark line laboriously through the snow, and he heard the sound of chanting. Instinctively, without a second hesitation, he changed his course. No longer flying at an angle as before, he pointed his skis straight down the mountainside. The dreadful steepness did not frighten him. He knew full well it meant a crashing tumble at the bottom, but he also knew it meant a doubling of his speed, with safety at the end. For, though no definite thought passed through his mind, he understood that it was the village cure who carried that little gleaming lantern in the dawn, and that he was taking the host to a chalet on the lower slopes, to some peasant in extremis. He remembered her terror of the church and bells. She feared the holy symbols. There was one last wild cry in her ears as he started, a shriek of the wind before his face, and a rush of stinging snow against closed eyelids, and then he dropped through empty space. Speed took sight from him. It seemed he flew off the surface of the world. Indistinctly, he recalls the murmur of men's voices, the touch of strong arms that lifted him, and the shooting pains as the skis were unfastened from the twisted ankle. For when he opened his eyes again to normal life, he found himself lying in his bed at the post office with the doctor at his side. But for years to come, the story of Mad Hibbert's skiing at night is recounted in the mountain village. He went, it seems, up slopes, and to a height that no man in his senses ever tried before. The tourists were agog about it for the rest of the season, and the very same day, two of the bolder men went over the actual ground and photographed the slopes. Later, Hibbert saw these photographs. He noticed one curious thing about them, though he did not mention it to anyone. There was only a single track. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you all for the support on the previous videos. It's been awesome. I hope you guys enjoy all the different stuff that I'm doing. I have a bunch of ideas for stuff that I want to do. I'm going to try and get as much of the content out as I can, and I just hope that it's enjoyable for everybody. So let me know what you think about it in the comments if you would. That helps me out greatly. And I guess that brings us to the end of this video. So if you liked it, be sure to subscribe, like it, and come back for all the other videos that I'm going to be doing. And I appreciate you all. And have a nice night. And sweet dreams.